It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Aaron Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, joined as always, obviously, by Aaron Saunders. Brandon Rossi's voice bringing us in. How could we get any better? Well, it's a Friday, and we got DB joining the pod as well. DB, how we doing?
Doing what, man? I am headed to Disney next week. So
is it the yearly Disney trip that's coming up, huh?
It is. It's my 1 week a year where I kind of get to completely unplug. So I'm excited about that.
Hey, thank goodness Rodgers signed before next week then, huh?
Right.
Yeah, we got video out there.
Got that out the way. I will be kind of, side-eyeing the mini camp storylines, but I'm sure there won't be too many interesting things. Just don't make any like trades or anything like that while I'm gone. That'd be good. Wait till I get back.
No promises. I'll be honest. I got to root against that happen from our standpoint, who will be here doing content. I'm hoping we get some news like that. So unfortunately, I got to go against DB and hope that something actually happens. Alan, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. I had a good day today. This is like my 7th podcast of the day.
Yeah.
So I'm glad DB.
Yeah, I saw you were on with Nick. I guess you got the invite just slightly before me.
It's just the way it works,
Yeah, I'll be on there Monday.
Yeah, so I'm glad DB's here. I'll let him do most of the talking.
I
also had an 11-minute morning rush this morning, so the people are overdosing on Alan today.
Well, I mean, and they're loving it. They're loving this specific episode because I had 3 people send me it. I saw that there were clips being tweeted from the episode. I mean, Alan was on a heater this morning.
What was it an Alan like rant special? Were you ranting about something?
Yeah, I mean, the Cleveland Browns caught a stray.
People that want the Steelers to tank and they're mad that they signed Aaron Rodgers because they're better now. And I'm just like, man, that ain't sports. Sorry. Also doesn't work in the NFL, or at least never has worked.
And we talked about that. I actually want to start off by reading a very nice comment that we got, Alan. One of the big fans of the show, one of DB's biggest fans as well, Brooklyn. Anytime that Fridays are her favorite day of the podcast. She's a daily listener or watcher, but Fridays especially because of DB. Also, every Friday she goes to her beach condo. Her son, she threw in here, autistic, and that hit home for me, obviously. If you guys know, watch or listen to this, I think I mentioned it before, but my mom retired this year from special education, so that certainly hit home for me. But she walks the beach, tries to ignore the old F words in my condo, who police anyone who doesn't properly break down their boxes, fish off the dock, listen to Morgan Wallen, and watch my favorite podcast on YouTube. Steelers football makes me joyful. I remain disgustingly optimistic no matter what the situation is. Thank you and Alan for all you guys do. I look forward to that Friday show, DB included, although maybe not as reliable. Just calling out your internet here. I learned as an educator that people rarely say thank you, so thank you. Keep up the great work. Have a wonderful weekend. So many horrible podcasts out there. No one can ever beat that guy's review. She's talking about that one on Apple that I read the other day, Alan. But so I won't try to do that. Just wanted to let you guys know that what you do matters and enhances my life, and I'm sure a bunch of others. Keep up the great work. TGIF. Thank you so much, Brooklyn. You are very much appreciated. Also, she's the one that sent me the pictures that are right behind me there. Those are her terrible towels on the beach. I had to put them up behind me in a prime spot right above my microphone. But Brooklyn's the best.
Yeah, one of the best members of the audience here. Thank you, Brooklyn. We appreciate you as well.
She had a question here that I wanted to discuss, though, and she sent me this like days prior, and I was trying to find a place to work it in. Well, when you say something like that, you're getting your question.
Yeah, you're getting to the front of the line there with that one.
She wants to know about receiver types, and not necessarily, we've already talked about like the X, Y, and Z and what makes those different. But if you're talking about like body types that you want in a receiver room to complement each other, keep hearing this player is the same as DK, this player is the same type as Calvin, and the parallels there. Like, what should this team be looking for right now? What do they have right now in that room, and how can you maybe avoid those parallels?
I think that's a really good question. The expression that I've always kind of grown to gravitate towards is like you want to build out your receiver room like a basketball team, like a starting 5 in a basketball team. Like that's kind of like what you're aiming for. just getting different archetypes of players. I don't necessarily view it as much anymore about body type, although certain teams have certain thresholds and things that they look for with size and speed and measurables and things like that. I kind of look at it more from like, what do they do best and how, like, what areas of the field are they going to operate within? You know, do you have guys that are going to stretch the field vertically, horizontally? Are they quick winners? Are they like, you know, are they yak guys, things like that? And I think ideally, you know, the idea thing is that you have one or multiple guys that can do a couple different things at a really high level. They can, you know, create explosive plays, but maybe they're also a really good route runner as well. But those guys that can do multiple things or everything at a high level are like really, really rare. Those are the ones that are usually making like, you know, $30 million. Those are like the Justin Jeffersons of the world that create a bunch of explosive plays, can get downfield, but are also like elite route runners, things like that. They just Jamar Chase, kind of same way, explosive play generator, but also incredible with the ball in his hands because he's so strong. So I think really for me, it's like with DK, you know that you've got one of the league's like premier speed threats. So it's kind of like figuring out what kind of role you want your, you know, kind of auxiliary pieces to kind of field. I think Pat's going to generate a lot more targets, I feel like, because of Rodgers and his, you know, affinity for the quick game, getting the ball out quick. They're probably going to use him more in the slot to kind of fill that role underneath. But I mean, I've been saying it. I think having a guy like a route runner type that can win kind of one-on-one when you get single coverage is definitely something nice, especially with Arthur Smith. You get the 12 personnel. You're going to see a lot of single high coverage. Who can win on like two-way goes? And that's kind of the question that the kind of receiver that I would be kind of targeting. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think, you know, having different skill sets is very valuable in the receiver room.
Alan, anything to add to that?
Well, that was an extremely proficient technical description of the differences in the types of wide receivers. So I'm just going to go completely off the board here to answer this question just based on vibes. Okay, just vibes. Here's the different types of wide receivers that you need. Okay, you need the guy that the defensive backs are a little bit afraid of. Okay, you need somebody that when they're in their meeting room on Tuesday, they're like, what are we going to do about 11, 5, whatever? How are we going to stop this guy? We are going to have to do something different than what we normally do to stop this guy. We're going to have to put somebody in a position they aren't used to. If you line up your offense and every guy on the defense says, all right, man, it's just a normal plan this week. We do what we always do. You're already lost. You have to have somebody, at least somebody. Bengals have like 2 or 3 somebodies that gets a guy out of a defense's comfort zone. You also have to have the opposite. You have to have your quarterback's best friend. You have to have that receiver that is just a 100 out of 100 reliability in terms of he always runs the right route. He always makes the right read, and forget the right read. Actually, right doesn't even matter. He always makes the exact same read as the quarterback. When him and the quarterback are looking at the defense, they're doing things exactly the same way. Okay. I see this, he sees this, and we both come to the same conclusion. I should do that. Ball's there in my hands. I catch it all the time. Okay. You need one of those guys. And then you need somebody who can make something out of nothing. When the defense is cutting you off, you're behind the sticks, you're losing in the game, your playbook gets cut down. You just need someone who can go make a play, who can beat his guy one-on-one, who can make somebody miss a tackle or break a tackle. Somebody who, hey, the cards aren't falling the way we thought they were. We just need a little bit of hope right now. Somebody that can give you that hope. So not technical descriptions at all. Not talking about position. I'm saying those are the 3 kind of things. If I want a receiver room, that's what I need. I need the guy the defense is afraid of. I need the quarterback's best friend. And I think the guy who can just make something out of nothing.
I thought when you said that about vibes and stuff, you were going to go with like an aesthetic thing. Like the guy that wears like shooter sleeves or one guy with no gloves.
No,
that's what I thought you were
like the way they approach the game or the sort of role and you can have each of Derrick's categories can be each of my categories. You play the Baltimore Ravens, Zay Flowers plays in the slot, but that's the guy that the defense is afraid of. right? You play the Los Angeles Rams over the last few years. Cooper Kupp's in the slot. Well, he's the quarterback's best friend. Like, it's just, it's different. You can do it different ways, but I tried to go a little different there.
I also think that it's a good point about about like having a guy that the defense has to kind of shift their own philosophy on what they like to do on a weekly basis. I do think that is valuable. I think if you look at like certain trends around the league with the rise of too high, like how you can kind of counter that and stuff like that. But you even look at, like, go back to the Seahawks offense, like, which was not one of my favorite offenses to study last year, but they saw a ridiculous amount of too high. They also saw one of the lowest amount of press coverage last year. Why do we think that is? Well, it's because teams don't really want to lead DK one-on-one with a safety in the middle of the field. And that's kind of the part about, like, people argue, like, what is a wide receiver one? Like, what characteristics does he have to possess? What's the production, this and that? One of the things I look for is, like, do they tilt the coverage? Do you change the contour of the structure on the back end just by your presence on the field? And I think that DK is kind of limited because he's really only a speed guy, but he is an elite speed explosive play generator, even if he can't do some of the other things that maybe some of the other top guys can. Because if you can't really press him, because that's really a bad idea, and then you can't play like single high, and if you do, you have to cheat this middle field safety over his direction. So that's why, like, when we talk about even though the Steelers aren't going to play a ton of 11 personnel, like, the importance of having another wide receiver too that can win one-on-ones on the other side, it's because, like, the entire philosophy of the offense with Arthur Smith is you want to pack things in, you want to condense things, you want to get as many big bodies on the field as you can, try to get a safety in the box, and then you want to try to create those natural one-on-ones on the outside. If we assume that DK is going to get the safety cheating in his direction, the other guy is going to have a lot of favorable matchups. It's just a matter of, like, they have that player that can do those things and win one-on-one beyond just, like, we know that Calvin, I think, can stretch the field, right? Like, we saw that last year. Can he win enough one-on-one, or if guys start to kind of crowd the line of scrimmage and get their hands on him, can he win in those situations? I think that's the biggest question mark when we're talking about what this offense could look like next year.
And we've talked, this question to me, was a general statement in terms of building a wide receiver room. Specifically, when you look at the Steelers, though, my follow-up to that would be, when you are in such a desperate need for just wide receiver talent, does it matter? Like, can you be picky about the type of receiver that you're looking to add to a room like this, or you just need to take the talent that you can find? What's your thought on that? We'll start with Alan for this one.
Yeah, no, I think they can be a little bit picky because, like, you just don't, if it's just, like, it's not like they have nobody at wide receiver. They have probably 3 guys that they would feel good about being in their top 4. So if what you have is like an exact clone of Roman Wilson, not that I think that would be available to them. Honestly, none of their guys really does that really fit. But, like, if it's a player that's just a slot receiver, that's a lot less valuable to them than someone can play outside, because I think Wilson and Austin can kind of handle that slot role. They need more help on the outside. If it's a guy who but if it's an outside receiver who just does vertical routes, Gabe Davis, like, he's probably less valuable than an outside receiver that can also do some other stuff, because you're going to want DK Metcalf to be the guy doing a lot of running your vertical routes. So, I mean, I think they can be a little bit picky, because you're not going to get a good wide receiver at this point. So you better get one that fits because you're not going to be overwhelming with talent. So it better be a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, at this stage of the proceedings, it's like beggars can't be choosers, right? It's the same kind of conversation you're talking about, like, with Rodgers, right? Like, the Steelers kind of escaped that first, like, wave of free agency. They were the team that didn't have a quarterback. Rodgers didn't have a suitor. It's just kind of like why that marriage kind of slowly fell in place. Like, neither one of them kind of had another dance partner. I think with the wide receiver conversation, it's interesting because I kind of do view Calvin and Roman as, like, repetitive skill sets. They're just very similar players in that they're, like, speed slot guys. That's kind of like the role that I envision them in, and what I think that will really allow them to reach their potential, and then further development kind of happens, like, over time. the outside receiver thing is difficult because like the Z receiver is going to have to do a lot of stuff in terms of like coming in closer to the formation and blocking. And that was one of the things we talked about with like the addition of Robert Woods. And like, while Robert Woods is kind of like, I mean, he was the really the godfather of like the power slot kind of condensed Z receiver when he was with the Rams. They kind of developed their system around some of the things that he could do as a blocker. Well, what makes that really dangerous is like Woods was also a really good receiver at the time. Like he could really get open, and he was tough after the catch, tough over the middle of the field. Like he could do a lot of really good things. The thing now is that Woods doesn't really have the springs off the ball or the explosiveness in and out of his breaks to really threaten defenders. So like defenses are going to be okay with you bringing him on the field and covering him with whoever their second corner is on the outside. Like they're not going to be afraid of that matchup. And then like when you talk about adding different pieces to the puzzle, you get siloed, which we can kind of talk about this a little bit with the tight end discussion too. You get siloed in trying to say like, okay, we're going to throw the ball, so we're going to put our better like pass catching receiver in here, or we're going to run the ball, so we're going to put Robert Woods in there. Opponents get like tendencies based off of that too, and you can't be so blatant in what you're trying to do. But the worst case scenario is that they roll out next season with somebody like a Van Jefferson type, which is like someone who just has no business being on the field for 700 plays. Everybody and their mom knows it, but that's just kind of the way that their roster left at the end of the off season. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Robert Woods doesn't need 700 snaps next season. I don't think that's the plan, hopefully, but we'll just have to see how the next couple of months plays out.
You mentioned the tight end thing and that we can use this to transition. Just real quick, I wanted to bring this up. You may have said it elsewhere, but I at least saw it in a conversation that you were having with somebody on Twitter, DB, and that was that you felt like Pat was the beneficiary so far. Obviously, we don't know what else they're going to do with the room with pass catchers, but at least this point, looking at the current state of this team, granted, Rodgers hasn't had elite success with the tight ends in the past, but if you look at the roster right now, I know that you mentioned this, he's, a quick underneath winner. Is that literally all it is to it? Why you feel like he is the beneficiary there, or can you expand upon that more?
Yeah, I just think like stylistically, the quarterback's position is going to be a lot different. Like Russ is a guy that wants to hold on to the ball, kind of play outside of structure. And there are some benefits to that style of play. Rodgers at this point in his career, like he's very rhythmic. He's based on like timing. He wants to get the ball out quick. He got the ball out quick last year. It was like 2.65 seconds. Now there are some drawbacks to that style of play as well that I think are worth kind of diving into on a more detailed level. But if the ball is coming out quick, he's their best underneath winner. I mean, if we're talking about if teams are going to be, kind of leery of pressing DK and he's not going to be able to get those like quick in breakers, Pat's going to have a lot of opportunity, especially like out of the slot when Rodgers wants to get in the gun and play like point guard and things like that. I just think his skill set matches up best with like being able to win underneath. And I think the ball will actually come out quick. There was a lot of times last year where I felt like he was getting looked off and he shouldn't have been. So I don't think that will happen with Rodgers. I think people will begin to want Rodgers to hold on to the ball more rather than get the ball out quick, which is pretty much the antithesis of what it was last year watching Russ play, at least on film.
Alan, would you?
When it was Fields.
Okay. I was just say, would you co-sign that, or who do you feel like is the beneficiary of the Aaron Rodgers signing within the pass catching group?
Yeah, I mean, I think Freiermuth makes a lot of sense. I think Roman Wilson. I mean, like it's a lot of the same stuff. Like he's a guy that's going to operate in the middle of the field. He's a guy that can at least. I mean, we haven't seen it, but like you at least look at the skill set and you're like, this guy could operate quick game. Could be good on slants and hitches and things like that. Like I think very similar, basically for all the same reasons. Freiermuth, I would say Roman Wilson as well.
Okay, yeah, I like that shout. That's who came to mind for me as well, other than Pat. All right, let's stick with the tight end discussion, though, because Bother had brought up a couple here. And again, I did the comment was on Morning Rush, so I'll allow him to just say, hey, Alan. Hey, Alan, love the Rodgers signing. I'm hyped that he's here. But my, oh my, can you please explain to Steelers fans why going after Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith is an upgrade for Arthur Smith's offense, especially with the loss of Parham, and explain what a 12-13 personnel and how Smith plans to live in it this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the Steelers tight ends and you got Pat Freiermuth, and he's really good. We just talked about him a lot. You got Darnell Washington, definitely a way better blocker than Freiermuth. Has not really lived up to what they had hoped for him to become as a receiver to this point, but I think still a very valuable blocker. Connor Hayward kind of does 4 or 5 things, like, and none of them like super well, but like there is value in what he brings to the table in terms of being able to represent a different number of positions, like in a huddle. But like if Pat Freiermuth gets hurt, Connor Hayward can't do that job. You can't line Connor Hayward up and Pat Freiermuth out there and say that's 12 personnel. You can really kind of only do it with Darnell Washington. Like here's the thing. The point of 12 personnel is to stress the defense in terms of like you're going to be very mirrored. You're going to be the same on both sides. You're not the same with Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. Like you're just not. You're letting some team throw their strong side linebacker out there and be like, yeah, he's got him. Like, I think another tight end that can be a legitimate receiving option is an absolute necessity. And the same thing, another thing about Hayward, you can't really play him inline. Like he's not a threat as a blocker, as an inline blocker. So like you just don't take it seriously if you stand there next to the tackle with his hand in the ground. You're just giving away pass. So I think they need somebody that with the receiving part of the skill set. And honestly, they really need somebody with the all-around skill set. Because like you said, you start to just give away what you're going to do with your personnel if they're only able to do one part of the job. So I think tight end's almost as big of a need as wide receiver is at this point.
DB, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I'm actually writing like kind of a lengthy, kind of nerdy piece on this topic, so I don't want to give away like too much of that because I'm gonna force you guys to the site. But I will say that like I am definitely in disagreement with really just like the general consensus on the Jonnu thing. I definitely understand. I agree with what Alan was saying, was that like I would love to get them like to get an upgrade in the tight end room just to like fill it out, because Arthur Smith ran 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, second highest rate in the NFL last year. I even think that could take an uptick, and the NFL in general is using like more tight ends. The issue with the Jonnu thing is, one, it's just the simple math, in my opinion, of like allocation resources. Like you're trading for a 30-year-old tight end coming off a career year, and then you're going to have to give him a new contract. There's just no way. Really, it comes down to that for me, for a team that's not really in a win now window. The second part of that is I don't see the way that you're going to get Pat on the field at the same time. Like they're the same role. Because if you do play 12 personnel, you're going to get into the situation of like the Steelers want to be a run first team anyway. So that doesn't really match like their philosophy on that side of the ball. But you're going to get into a situation where like defenses are going to play them like wide receivers. They're going to just bring a nickel on the field, and then you're going to lose the advantage of like what Washington and Freiermuth kind of create, because they can actually run the ball. If you've got 2 tight ends on the field, like one of their like biggest personnel formations that they use is like they'll put 2 tight ends on the field, they'll put both of them next to each other on the right side, and they'll run weak side, or they'll run wide zone to that direction. The big thing is like whoever's in line, whoever's the Y, has to be able to block an edge defender. Jonnu doesn't block. Like he is basically a pseudo receiver. Like he can't block. Miami didn't ask him to block. It's not what he's going to do. So then you're forcing Pat into that role. And like Pat has gotten into I've actually given him credit over the past like year. I feel like he's morphed kind of into more of a functional blocker. But again, that's not really his skill set. So you're going to be making your run offense worse by putting them on the field. And then you get into the fact of like, okay, I just don't think it's as simple as like people make it out to be, which is like, oh, it'll be nice to have both them on the field as receivers. It is, but defenses are going to counter that by just bringing more DBs on the field. And then you kind of lose that advantage. And it's not as if you can just throw them both on the field when you want to pass and then bring in Washington when you want to run, because then you're just giving away what you do every season, which I have some funny notes about the Dolphins offense that I'm going to include in my article. But yeah, I mean, you just end up siloing the offense. I just don't think the opportunity is there, and you'll get that type of investment back on like whatever you're trying to get on return.
What about a player like Kyle Pitts, who is just basically is a wide receiver?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't watched Pitt's last season. He's on my fantasy team or in my dynasty league, and to be honest
I had
with
him
you,
on my dynasty team for 3 years, and I was like,
I hate it. It's the worst. It's the worst experience of all time.
I talked myself into it working 3 years in a row, and then I was like, I gotta cut.
He was on my bench.
I gotta get.
This is the year, though.
It was not good for my.
It's
mental
always the
health,
year, yeah.
Okay, I had to separate myself as a Cal Pitts owner.
I haven't watched them as much on film, so I don't know. I will say, like, when I was studying Arthur Smith's offense last year, I thought Pitts had really lost a lot of juice just in terms of, I don't think that he is, coming out of Florida. I legitimately thought that he may be good enough to be like an actual receiver. Like, you could split him out wide. And then when I was watching their offense last year, that's just not the case. Like, he's just not that type of athlete anymore after the injuries. And I know he was banged up too during that 2023 season. Production-wise, box score scouting, it doesn't look like last year was any better. So, Pitts kind of falls into that same thing. To me, it's like it's a little bit different if you're talking about getting, even if Jonnu, so like that's not to harp on the point, but if Jonnu was available in last season's free agency, he signed like a 2-year, $8 million deal. If the Steelers wanted to do that to go get an upgraded the third tight end, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. It's just now you're going to be paying a premium for that, for a player that you're going to be taking one of, like, I think Washington's a really valuable player just because he does a lot of the dirty work, and their best formation last year was 12 personnel. Like, they weren't a good offense. But if you look at like their success rate, they were 12th when they were in 12 personnel. And it's because of the balance and the threat that it poses to defenses with having a good blocking tight end, a true inline Y, and then having a move kind of F piece that can give defenses problems in the pass game. So I want them to expand on that more than I do like try to add another piece where you're starting to like mix and match that duo kind of up. And I want an upgrade with the 13 personnel. Like, I would like somebody better than Hayward, better than Pruitt, but I don't want to spend whatever the contract and investment is going to be for Jonnu. So
I think that's fair. Also, going through the comments here, I'm realizing that Darnell Washington is the new player that the comments think that Alan and I hate. Just because we don't think that he can be like 1,000-yard receiver as a tight end.
But he doesn't need to be.
Exactly. Right. But like, if we say, compliment him obviously for his work as a blocker and say, yeah, I'd probably utilize him more in the red zone than they have in the past. I think that there's certainly a role there, but just because we think that he's not some like supercharged athlete, it means that we're haters of him.
So if I was going to pick a player to hate, it would not be the 6'8", 300-pound guy. I'd be hating on Calvin's little ass. I don't know. I'm not hating on Darnell at all.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys the questions. All right, about these specific players, and then as I'm doing this, I want the audience to the podcast nod if you've ever heard of these players or not. Okay, you guys know ball, so I'm assuming that you all have probably heard these names in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah,
Josh Oliver.
Yeah. Okay.
For the Vikings,
actually got a nice contract from the Vikings. Yeah,
that's where I'm going here. Do you guys know of a player named John Bates?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
He got into a fight against the Steelers last year.
Yes. Kobe Parkinson.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reading these names off because these players signed $21 million contracts recently in free agency and got $7 million per year. John Bates is not a threat as a pass catcher at all. They bring him in the game to block. The reason why the Vikings offense is so incredibly dangerous is for a myriad of reasons. They've got one of the best play callers in the NFL. They've got TJ Hawkinson, but Hawkinson doesn't have to do all of the true Y stuff with the blocking aspect and element because they have Josh Oliver. Having a true inline blocker can open up other players on the offense in a way that it doesn't get reflected in the box score. What Darnell can do in terms of handling edge rushers one-on-one, being able to climb the linebackers, block in space, being able to seal the edge is incredibly valuable. It doesn't matter. What you're all probably saying, I haven't watched the podcast that are getting these comments, but I'm assuming that people do the same thing that they're asking me all the time is like, why aren't they using Darnell to his full potential? Darnell
exactly.
moves like a battleship. He cannot turn.
That's probably why people think I hate him. As I said, that he should have to have like an alarm or something if he's going to make a turn.
Okay, so if you just look at it from a receiver standpoint, okay, when we talk about these like vertical threats or straight line threats, or even guys like this has been a talk. Roman Wilson has talked about this as a receiver. Like one of the biggest skills that you have to develop is the ability to maintain speed and then properly decelerate and get out of your brakes. Okay. Darnell cannot do it. It's just it's not a thing where like, oh, he can maybe work on it. He's 6'7", 285 pounds on a good day. Like he's not going to be this route runner. Like he's not going to do it. The only thing that Darnell is going to be able to do as a receiver is he's going to be able to get into the flat where it's going to be difficult to tackle him after he gets the ball. He can run the crossing routes off the boot action, off wide zone play action. And then he can stretch the seam and you might be able to throw him a jump ball in the red zone. Now, some of that stuff they haven't done, and maybe they could do a little bit more. We'll see down the road. But what he does right now for the offense is very valuable. And I'm tired of acting like it's not because it doesn't end up in score production. Like he has exceeded like his draft slot value. And I just get incredibly frustrated when we harp on his lack of targets or what he can't do as a receiver, because that's not why they drafted him. They drafted him to take the blocking load off of Pat and allow him to be a receiver. So it just it grinds my gears.
100%. Great
Darnell
stuff.
is a good player. I promise. He's going
to. Boys, I got to bounce. I'm going to let you handle the outro here.
We got it. Alan Saunders, everybody bouncing, but yeah, great stuff. Great discussion about tight ends. And I don't know where the Darnell thing came from, but yeah, I think it's literally just because Alan and I have said that, like, people think again that he's just like he could be Pat Freiermuth if Pat Freiermuth wasn't here and be that type of receiver. And that's when we've shot that down. I think now we've got the tag that we do not like Darnell Washington, but I love Darnell Washington. I think he's a good player. I think he's very valuable for this offense to have. But also very funny here, just I want to say this before we get going to somebody commented and said, why are you guys not talking about Isaiah Bond? And Alan just replied, why would we be talking about Isaiah Bond? Comments.
Do you know why that is? There is somebody, and I only know this because somebody tagged me in a tweet or something. Someone put out a fake like Facebook thing saying,
"Oh, those are so bad right now." Yeah. Steelers Facebook pages are.
I ain't had a Facebook since I was in. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I mean, it's been over a dozen years or something like that since I've had a Facebook. So I don't really know what goes on over there. I know that Twitter is consistently a mess and a true like cesspool. So I cannot imagine what Facebook would be like in this day and age. And I don't want to find out. I don't plan on it.
Let me ask you one more thing before we get out of here. We'll answer one here without Alan. So obviously this is pure speculation, but Infinity here asked, do you guys think that Rodgers has been in possession of the Steelers playbook already?
Probably. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's interesting just because, like, I don't know how the conversations have gone. Obviously, they've talked about how there was an open line of communication the whole time. But from the Steelers standpoint, would you be a little bit worried, like, if he ended up not? So, like, I mean, Aaron's not a guy that I think is going to end up passing that information along or anything like that. But then it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to say taking a risk, but if he doesn't sign, you got somebody in possession of your playbook that's not on the team. So I don't know. You'd have to be very confident that he was going to be signing, which I think they were.
Yeah. I would say I would say he probably had it. I mean, Aaron.
I don't think the whole time, though. I mean, we're going back to like March 12th when we thought, like, that's how long I've had this graphic. I don't know if that whole time. Maybe within not the last. Time. Yeah, within like the last couple months. Or so.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, a lot of the offense, which will be a really big talking point over the next couple months, especially like once we get into like training camp and we see them take the field in the preseason, although he probably won't play very much. But, the offense is going to be different than what it was last year or what a typical Arthur Smith offense is, because Aaron kind of has his own thing. Like that's he has certain things that he likes, certain things that he dislikes. And the marriage of those two things is why, I was a big proponent of like getting him in here for mini camp and obviously training camp too, to kind of hash those things out. I think it's a good line of communication and allows you to kind of work through things on the field, develop chemistry with the guys, and just have that, start to kind of form what the offense is going to look like. So it's going to be different for sure. I'm at least a little bit interested in seeing what it would have looked like. So,
yeah, I'm happy that it happened when it happened. Like I'm glad that we're not sitting here waiting next week. Is he going to show up or potentially even long? Like there was a real shot that it wasn't going to be until training camp. Like we could have been waiting another 5 weeks for this to happen.
That would have been that'd have been pretty brutal. I think it would be nice to, the quarterback is always going to generate a lot of conversation, but I even think like our podcast today, being able to talk about like tight ends and things like that, like there are other things that matter a lot. You know what I'm saying? And especially like for certain teams, the quarterback is going to be the real like driver of the success. Like your franchise caliber guys, those guys are going to generate even more conversation. But a lot of times that like, I feel like we almost lose sight of like what is going to make the Steelers like a good team next year. And the odds that like Rodgers is going to be the person like driving their success is pretty low. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think that that's realistic to expect him to do that at 41, 42 years old. But yeah, I hope we can kind of generate some better conversation, some healthier conversation about other aspects of the team. And,
I agree, but I also this is the last thing that I'll say about kind of tying Rodgers into the entirety of this discussion here is for me, while ultimately it's not like all of a sudden I'm looking at them as Super Bowl contenders or anything like that, just because of his presence. They're much more interesting. That is what I was asking for. I just want to have an interesting football team to watch. And I think there's the path to them being good, not great on the offensive side of the football. Now there's a lot of variables in that and maybe too many but ifs to overcome. And I talked about this week on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Obviously need a leap from Broderick Jones, need him to play much better. Troy Fautanu, I think, two of his biggest fans are sitting here right now on this podcast, but there's obviously got to be at least a little bit of what's he going to look like. Obviously, the state of the wide receiver room. If Roman Wilson takes a leap, that would be massive. Big if. There's just so many ifs that when you start to add up that, you leave yourself with like a razor thin margin of error trying to thread that needle of being good. So I think the path is there for it to happen.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole like quarterback value conversation, right? Like when you have one of those like franchise guys, your margin for error kind of expands, your ceiling expands, but it's also your floor that expands because those guys typically make everybody else better. And those leaps necessarily all don't need to come to fruition in order for you to be kind of in that upper echelon of like offenses and things like that. But I think the topics that you're talking about, the leaps from the young players and stuff like that, like so that's some of the content that I'm trying to do on my channel as well. But I think it's good content regardless to talk about other areas of the team and, kind of where players need to improve or where the team can use them better to kind of, allow their skill set to kind of shine. So,
yeah, definitely more excited now with Rodgers in tow. And it's not because I think he makes some drastic difference for the overall results. I just think they're going to be much more entertaining. And that's what I was looking for.
It's definitely going to be more chaotic. And I think that anybody like that, I know Alan probably hit on this the morning drive, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it this week, but just the idea that they were going to be even remotely interested with Mason Rudolph at quarterback for 17 games, that's just asinine to me. And regardless of what you think of Rodgers, like personally, or like his on-field play recently over the last couple seasons, like he's better than Mason Rudolph. Like anyone debating that, I know there's a couple people on Twitter that would debate that, but not serious people in my opinion.
One of them deleted their account. One of them deleted their account, so we'll see if he comes back. But for the time being, he's not there to make those debates on Twitter. But when and if he does come back, I will be ready for that day. DB, tell the people where they can find you.
Yep, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. You can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. Like I said, I'll have pretty interesting about the tight end discussion, just kind of further expanding on some stuff that we talked about today. But I think it's hopefully going to be good content, so I'm excited about it.
Don't miss any of the stuff over at SteelersNow.com, and also subscribe to SN Plus. A bunch of subscribers coming in because of the sale that just expired. So if you missed out, sorry you didn't get in on it. You could have gotten SN Plus for $1 a month, $12 for an entire year. That's expired, but you can still get it for about $4 a month, which is still a really good deal. Ad-free experience, obviously the biggest part of that, along with the exclusive content that comes over there. But you can join in with Mike Burke, Andrew Hathorn, Alex Metrovich, and Michael Richards, who have recently subscribed to SN Plus. We appreciate you guys doing so. And also the monthly live stream that we do coming up in a couple weeks as well would be on the channel. And you cannot join. You absolutely cannot join unless you're subscribed to SN Plus. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments your thoughts, anything that we talked about today, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Derrick Bell and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.